Okay, welcome everyone. Chris Petri here. Thanks so much for joining along for this oil painting of the lighthouse. We're going to have a fantastic time painting this. We're going to have our paints on camera at all time over here to the left-hand side. I'm just zooming in here on the painting so you can see what our finished painting is going to look like. A white lighthouse. We have some beautiful ocean here in the distance, some green tall grass along the coast area here. We have some sand. We have a lighthouse quarters alongside, adjacent to the lighthouse. Some beautiful green, dark green trees, pine trees, and bushes and things. So, and just the wonderful fun of oil painting, creating all of the color mixes. We do a light, golden, beautiful yellow ochre underpainting first with just, putting it on with a brush lightly and then using a rag to dry it up and kind of just smooth it out. And then that's what we work with our underpainting, and we just mix our other colors over the top of that, and we kind of come up with a nice abstract looking painting. It's not really super, let's say, realistic, but yet it's, has some good realism to it, but it does have an abstract feel to it. And again, the textures are a little different. I like the texture of almost like the fabric kind of look to the canvas with some of the lighter glazings over the top of the canvas where you kind of see the texture of the canvas itself. So, but it's all up to you. You're the artist. You're going to figure out what you like most. You can go with thicker paint and not have so much of the texture of the canvas if you like, but we'll go over all that in this video. We'll cover all the details and minutiae of everything as we go, the steps, the techniques, the methods we use, the brushes, the paint mixes. We'll kind of just go over everything slow, steady, and get right through it. And within an hour, hour and a half, we're going to have a really wonderful painting completed with us all together here. Okay, so we'll be right back and we'll get started. All right, so we're just going to get started here. We saw the finished painting, a beautiful lighthouse. Let's get some yellow ochre just to prime the canvas a little bit. This is always good to do. You could work on a white canvas. This is a hardboard 9x12 hardboard canvas. You can use soft canvas, whatever you like actually, and you can prime your canvases ahead of time with some yellow ochre. Let them dry for about a week, let's say, or a couple, 3-4 days or a week, and then go over and paint on top. You can also mix different color combinations for your creative ideas with your priming your canvas. A lot of people like to go with more of a French ultramarine blue and yellow ochre. I think that's kind of a popular burnt umber and French ultramarine blue. So there's some different things you can do. I've a couple times I've heard oil painters say, like, painting your canvas, the mid-tone, so maybe something like the color of cardboard, where cardboard is sort of like that brownish medium tone. It's not really super dark like black, and it's obviously not super light like a canvas is like this, so it's kind of in between, so the middle tone. So you can kind of have some creative ideas on that, but I think I'll just start out with some yellow ochre. I just take a brush, like a damp brush, and put a little bit of yellow ochre on here just to get things primed a little bit. It's kind of nice too with the underpainting of the yellow ochre, and I use a rag to kind of work it in. Maybe I'll start with my brush like this. No particular rhyme or reason. I just try to get some yellow ochre on there. I can go all different ways, no big deal. And I just have a white rag. I think it's an old t-shirt or something, and you can use that. Once you get a little bit on there like this, get it somewhat on there, then we can take our rag and see if we can kind of work it around and get it kind of more of an even tone. And again, it's just an undertone, so it doesn't have to have any kind of particular exact tone, like exact lightness or darkness of the color. And it doesn't have to have any texture or any kind of, doesn't have to have any kind of specific markings. The brush strokes can be any which way, because again, it's just underneath everything that we're going to paint on top. But it is nice to have this golden undertone, I think. Sunlight is gold, so can't hurt to put the color of light onto the canvas. Everything is affected by the light, the sunlight. Maybe if it's a nighttime painting, maybe we wouldn't have to do, or maybe, this wouldn't be the exact perfect thing to do, but for anything outdoors and in the sunlight, this is kind of a good way to go. Just a simple idea. I'm going to try to experiment with all different ideas as I work with my oils, and I hope you do the same. Okay, so the next thing I'll do is I think we'll start out with some blue and white. Start to work in our sky first, but before we even do that, let's get a little bit of a sketch. We'll just sketch in a little bit of, I would say, maybe a third of the way up. A third of the way up, we could do the ocean, horizon line, and then we can create our lighthouse over here, maybe a little bit to the right of halfway should be fine. We can get our lighthouse here, like this, and we're just having a fun time creating a lighthouse. And we'll put all the details in with the paint and the brushes, just to get an idea with our charcoal so that we know round about where we're going to have to be. About halfway up on that lighthouse, there is a tree like this, and then there's a building next to it, the lighthouse quarters there, and there's some more trees over here that kind of come down here and meet the ocean there. Okay, so we just have an idea of the lighthouse quarters. Then we're going to have a little bit of some sand and beach over here, and some grass and bushes, and we'll see how we'll kind of just put it up over here and just get some marks on the canvas here, just so we have a little bit of, maybe there's some weeds over here as well, like that. And this will be sand through here. But once you have this quick sketch in with some charcoal, that gives you your basic layout of your design. And then we can just go in and start working in our sky. I think I'll put some white. It has, my brush has some of that yellow ochre in it already. And then let's go with some French ultramarine blue and cerulean blue. Maybe with a tiny bit of burnt umber in there to gray it down a little bit. Could also use a little bit of yellow and red. Put a little bit of that in there too. And that's all. We're just going to have some fun here. We're not going to really, maybe some clouds, so you can put some white in for some clouds. Go back and pick up some blue. And I'm just using a flat brush here. This is a number 10 Princeton Aspen series brush. and we'll experiment and see how this looks as we go. Maybe we'll put a little bit of white clouds up here. That's what I find fun about oil painting, is you have a lot of time to work. You can actually use a palette knife and scrape off paint if you decide you don't like a color or a section that doesn't look good. You know, you can just scrape off the paint like that, and that works too. So you have some more flexibility. I've been painting in watercolor for many years, so working with oil paints a little bit here and there over the years, but then now a little more often. I just find it really fun and relaxing to work with oils. I'm not in any rush. I don't have any stress, really. It feels like I don't have much stress with oil painting, because like I said, you can scrape off some of your paint, start over again on a certain section or whatever else. Maybe a little bit of phthalo green too. That kind of looks nice. A little bit of phthalo green in the blue. And you can get more impressionistic if you want with your brush strokes and things like this. I'll paint right into the lighthouse. You can do any kind of brush strokes any old way. You can go, let's go a little bit abstract today when we're working. Let's kind of just do some cross hatching and see how that looks. We'll take our thinking cap and put it on and say, well, how can we maybe do things a little differently this time when we paint this painting, this lighthouse? We've done lighthouses before. Maybe I'll put a couple links to the videos that we've done before with lighthouses, at least I think 2 or 3. I like to paint lighthouses a lot. Watercolor painters, you know, myself included, like to paint lighthouses. That's something that many watercolor artists always tend to enjoy to paint. It's, you know, water, it's along the ocean, everything about watercolor. But this is oils, and oils too. A lot of oil painters will paint lighthouses. The professional and the great masters always painted lighthouses, so can't go wrong with the lighthouses. And so I'm going to leave that background yellow ochre showing through. I don't think I'm going to try to cover that. I'm going to leave it. Again, I'm trying to do a little experimentation here, doing a little more of a, leaving things more abstract. Yes, it's not going to look super smooth looking and slick looking, the finish on it. It's going to have kind of a fabric type texture, which I like myself, so paint what you like. Can't go wrong with that. So we're going to put in some sand here, and as well we're going to be doing some grass and weeds and things, but I'll put the blue right over everything. This way we have like a harmony to the whole painting of the yellow ochre and blue. And of course we're going to go over with some green. You saw the finished painting, so we did have some of that green, the grasses and weeds along the beach here, and we have some beach sand. We're going to do some of that. But I think we are going to have a lot of fun kind of working in an abstract way like this. And it's not going to take us long either. We can get this painting done in like a half an hour, 45 minutes, I think. We're already a good way into the painting, and we've been working maybe 15, 20 minutes. So this is also a fun way to paint, because you can, you know, kind of, you know, you're not going to be spending hours and hours creating a painting. You can have fun, enjoy, have some time for a nice hobby, do some oil painting for an hour or two. You come up with a good looking painting. You can frame it, and then you have other time to do other things that you love to do as well. But I'm going to kind of leave it at this point here for just a quick break, and then when we come back, I'm just going to finish up. But I'm really, again, excited to try a little bit more of an abstract feel, leaving some of the texture of the canvas on this painting, leaving some of that yellow ochre underpainting showing through. That does have a beautiful look to it, blue and orange. kind of a beautiful color combination. And let's, again, take a quick break, and we'll come right back and continue. All right, so we're going to keep putting our oil paint on here. All right, so I think we'll start to work in maybe some greens. That's going to be maybe some yellow ochre and French ultramarine blue. Some cerulean blue, a little bit of phthalo green too, maybe. More yellow ochre. Maybe some lemon yellow over here. All right, I'll maybe rinse my brush. I like to rinse my brush after mixing out a whole bunch of colors like this. So I just rinse off my brush good in my water container. And that's what's great about these paints too. These are Winsor & Newton Artisan water mixable oil paints. So all you need really is just water to mix your paints, clean your brushes. When you're done at the end of the session after painting, you just use a little warm soapy water in a small container. I have a small bucket like this, a 1-quart bucket. I put warm soapy water in there, and I just clean the brushes with the warm soapy water. And then maybe once every month, I use maybe some turpentine to clean my brushes, just to get them really, really clean, dry them out, and then they're ready to go again. So, every once in a while I will use a little bit of turpenoid, but I'm really careful with that. I use it in the basement by the basement slop sink, so I'm not using, I'm being very extremely careful with anything I use that might be a paint thinner or turpenoid or anything like that. But mostly all you need really, you don't even have to have the turpenoid or anything like that to clean the brushes. You can just use plain old warm soapy water. Maybe once in a while you can leave the brushes soak in some warm soapy water, some extra time to soak, and then they should clean up perfect and fine. And then again, you don't need really anything but the paint. If you want to thin down your paint a little bit, you could use some, or the damp brush sometimes will act as a thinner, so you always have that. So I'll get some of the paint, the green. We're looking for the green here. And I'll probably start with some of the lighter greens here, like the olivey greens for some of these greens along here. And I'm just kind of being aware of that there is some water in the distance over here. That's the ocean, the horizon line of the ocean. So I'm just going to get some of that green going here. There's some darker greens by the lighthouse. And again, you've seen the finished painting, so you'll be aware of what the finished look looks like. And again, I'm just going to do cross hatching. Nothing really too fancy, just getting the paint on there. And again, I'm leaving some of the paint showing through the blue and the orange or the yellow ochre, like that. And these are the grass and weeds and things here. And there's some sand over through here. And we'll come over here and get this other bit of weeds and grasses over here. Like that. And then there's more sand coming through here. And then there's some taller weeds over here in the foreground. So maybe we'll just put some indications of that over here like this. And a few more over here like that. And that'll just give us our indication a little bit later when when we're toward the finishing up our painting, we will have a little bit of these taller grass and weeds here in the very, very foreground of the very bottom of the painting. and it'll overlap into the sand and the grass and weeds over here. And then we have some darker greens, so we'll come over here, more French ultramarine blue and yellow ochre and some of that lemony yellow, maybe a touch of the phthalo green, maybe some of the brown, get it a little darker. So all you have to do is just, if you kind of squint your eyes and look at your paints, so if you squint your eyes and look at all of your paints going across this whole line here, which we have French ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, phthalo green, yellow ochre, cadmium lemon yellow, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, and burnt umber. If you look across at these colors and then you squint your eyes a little bit, kind of like make everything out of focus, you'll see that the darkest colors are the French ultramarine blue, the phthalo green, and the burnt umber. Those are the real super dark colors that you have right here on your palette that we use on a constant basis here. So that's where you know if you want to get a nice rich dark green, you're going with burnt umber and French ultramarine blue to get really dark, and then you add your yellow in there, your gold, to get your green. Blue and yellow is green. And that's all that we needed to do for that. And then here I'm just gonna tap on some of that green here along the lighthouse. And again, I'm leaving some of that orange showing through. And let's make a little bit of some lighter green too. We don't want to go all extremely dark. Let's take some more of that yellow. Maybe get a little bit of white in there to lighten it up a little bit. That's all. And this way you can have a little bit of the lighter bits of green here too, just to get a variety of greens. Like we just wouldn't want to go with one green. Let's mix it up and get some varieties of green. I'm going to rinse my brush again, so this way I can work into another bit of darker green. So I rinse off my brush really well, go into the paper towel, wipe off the brush on the paper towel really well, and we'll go in again and grab some of that blue and burnt umber to get that really dark green with the yellow ochre, like that. Maybe a little bit of the phthalo green too mixed in there, because that's really a dark tone that we can use to get that green really dark. And then, but we don't forget that we want a little bit of the burnt umber in there too, to just tone it down a little bit. That can be a little bit too much excitement with that green if we go with just without toning it down a little bit with some of the brown. So there we go. We have some more of the dark green, and then we're going to go with some of that dark green. Once in a while, take your brush and get it into the paint and get a good chisel edge on your brush, so you can see you can get a good chisel edge on your brush like that, a sharp edge. So if you want to go on the top of that roof of the building here, and there's trees behind the building, you can get that by, you know, kind of getting your brush hairs kind of in a nice sharp edge, like a chisel edge, like that. All right, there we go. That's good. And then we have a little bit over here too, coming up alongside over that side of the lighthouse too, like that. I think we're getting there. So we have some good darks packed around the lighthouse. I'll rinse off my brush again. I'll get another fresh, clean paper towel and wipe off the brush like that, just to get it good and dry. You know, it's going to be damp, but that'll be good, like that. Okay, and then we're going to, let's make a sand color. A little bit of cadmium red and alizarin crimson. Gray it down with a little bit of the green. Like that. A little bit of white in there. A little bit of burnt umber. And that's kind of like a nice sand color. And then maybe a little more reddish color with a little bit of the green to tone it down a little bit for the roof. So the roof is a little bit more red. So let's do that. Let's get the roof in there next to the lighthouse. Like that. Good. And then the sand, I'll rinse off my brush again just to get the majority of the paint off. Wipe it off on a paper towel. And I'm going to go in and get this the sand color. I'm just going to get that sand color and we'll put that in like so. Like that. And we just scrub it in, get it on there. Mix it in with the other greens you had. Don't worry about the brush strokes as far as how you can just do cross hatching, back and forth, up, down, back and forth. And I'm just going to keep picking up that, gray it down a little bit with some green, that red, a little bit of white. Lighten that up just a bit like that. And there we go. We get the rest of the sand in. There we go. That's it. Simple as that. We get our sand color. We get that in. I will take some of that extra sand color and put it right over here. A little thicker so that when we peel up our tape we can blend that in nice. But that's really the fun of doing the sand. We just get that nice reddish mix going and then just get it in there. We'll put some shadows under some of the foliage and the beach shrubs and things that are along and grasses that are along here. But I think that looks pretty good. You know, you can do some upstrokes like this for the grasses with a little bit of that beach sand color just to get some of that beach sand color in there. That might look a little better just to kind of harmonize the colors a little bit. But that is looking pretty good. So we'll rinse off our brush once again. Now's a good time. We'll take another break. I think we're getting right to the point where we're almost finishing up. We're going to have to do the lighthouse itself. I wanted to leave that for last to do the final touches to the lighthouse. And I'll change out my water. My water's getting a little bit muddy with all the paint and rinsing we've been doing. But I'll get my brush, get it nice and clean, rinse it off, set that aside. I'm going to empty my bucket once we take a quick break now. And then when we come back, we'll just finish the lighthouse, finish some of the sky colors around the trees here. We did leave that a little bit unfinished, so we want to add a little bit of the sky color over here on the top of the trees. We're probably going to add a little bit of ocean over here on this top of this grass and weeds along here on the beach. So the tall grass here. So we are in good shape. And let's take a quick break if you want, or you can just keep working. I'm just going to hit the tape and take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Okay, so let's finish up. We said we want to take some of that sky wash, and that was the blues that we used, the cerulean blue, French ultramarine blue for the sky, and then we added a little bit of yellow ochre in there and a little bit of red. I think we added a touch of just a little bit of red to gray down the sky a little bit, the blue. So sometimes that blue coming straight out of the tube, cerulean or French ultramarine blue, straight out of the tube, that is going to be a little bit strong. So we wanted to definitely get that a little bit lighter and less. We made it lighter and less with less intensity, I should say. All right, so now we're going to go around the trees here with our, and then don't worry if you tend to find that you all of a sudden your brush hits some of the green on the trees and it's smudged into your sky color. You don't have to worry, you just go in. You can do two things. One thing is, the first thing you can do, you could take just a regular dry brush that you have, like a dry paintbrush that has no paint or anything, no dampness to it, and lift up. You can do that. That works like that. Or you could also take a paper towel and dab on the canvas. That won't hurt anything as well. And then you just go back and we get the blue again. Our blue, some white. You can do a test spot just to make sure that it looks pretty close to what you had before. And that's all you need, like that. And then usually you try, I usually try not to paint over what I've already painted on the canvas because it tends to make some awkward looking marks on there. Sometimes a little bit. It's kind of noticeable underneath the lights that I'm working on, but probably won't make a big deal. It won't be a big deal once it dries. But in any case, we are everything is looking quite good, I would say. Now I'll pick up some more of that. I'll make a little more of the blue, French ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, a little bit of white. So get some of that blue again here, maybe a little more of that. French ultramarine, tiny bit of red to tone it down a bit, like that. A little bit of yellow. Okay. And then maybe a little more blue again. Maybe a little more, maybe some phthalo green. All right, that's good. I think we want a little bit of that green for the ocean here. And then I'll just take the brush here and we'll make some ocean, indications of the ocean right across here, like this. And then all I'll do is I'll just make sure that it looks like it's pretty level going across this way. That looks pretty good. You can always grab a little bit of white, take some white. If you want to make a little bit of some highlights on the ocean, you could pick up a little more white, put it into where we just mixed the ocean green, which is blue and blue, mostly blue, and then a little bit of that phthalo green, and you get a little bit of that light kind of color, like sparkles of light. And you could do a little bit of the sparkles of light on the ocean. Like that. And then you can also rinse off the brush, dry off the brush again, and then go back in and get the blue and green, and then just load up the brush again with a little bit of that, and then you can go over the white again. If you have too much white there, you think maybe there's too much white that we put into that, and that's all. You could add a little more blue back in there, but I think that looks pretty good. You can even go in with some darker blue and some green, phthalo green, some burnt umber, maybe darken it up. Maybe you make a little bit of a darker. Out in the deep ocean, there's some of that dark bluish green, right? Then sometimes you have to dry off your brush and get more paint because when you paint on top of wet paint, the brush picks that up, and then you have to start with another. Okay, I'm going to leave that as it is. I think that looks fine. I'll rinse off my brush one more time. I think I'm going to empty my water bucket now and just get some fresh, clean water in there. Okay, I'll rinse off my brush one more time. Paper towel. So I rinse off my brush good. Paper towel. And I think we'll finish up the lighthouse. And the lighthouse is pretty much like white. And some of the details on the top of it are black. So I'll take the white and put that like so. Get a nice bright white there. And I will add some yellow ochre over here. So you're going to have some bright white, some yellow ochre, and then maybe some of that blue-green over here. So now we're going to have three whites. Stark white, a little bit of a warm white with a little bit of that yellow ochre in there, and then a little bit of a cool white, which has got a tiny bit of that bluey mixed up for the ocean. And that's all, just so that we have some different white colors to put on the lighthouse versus just going with all white paint. Let's mix it up a little bit. So I'm thinking the majority of it is kind of a straight white with a little bit of that yellow. So I'll just go in here carefully and do the lighthouse like so, going from left to right with the paint like that. Okay, and then on this side, I'll rinse off the brush again. Dry it off on a paper towel, pretty good here like this. Then we'll come over with that cooler white, which has got that little bit of blue in there, like that. And this side is going to be that little bit of a cooler blue, like that. Then I'm going to come back in and just go straight across. That. And then I'm going to rinse off my brush, and I think we're going to move to a smaller square brush. So now I'll go over to my number 2 flat brush or square brush, or it's called a bright here, a number 2 bright Princeton Aspen brush. This one was a number 10 bright. So that was the one we worked with the entire painting, but now we're going to downshift for a smaller brush just so we can get these final details in. So I just want to get around like that, and then we're going to get the some blue sky in the center here of the light. So that's the light there, the actual glass of the lighthouse. And then we can even take a bit of paper towel and just lift up a little bit of paint like that. And then we're going to go with some burnt umber. I think what I did is I did mix some things over here on the left side off the camera. I apologize for that. Sometimes I lose track of where my camera is, but I'm always talking through my colors, so I think you'll always know that I'll always have the colors. I'm always constantly mentioning what colors I'm using as we go. I'll add a little more French ultramarine blue up top. I want to make that the lighthouse, the actual light of the lighthouse, the very top of the lighthouse, I want it to be dark like black, so that would be French ultramarine blue and burnt umber. A lot of French ultramarine blue and definitely some burnt umber, and then we added a little bit of phthalo green into there too. But once you have that, you're fine. You can just dry off your brush a little bit with the paper towel so you don't have too much paint on there, and then you can go back in and pick up some more paint, but just lightly. And then let's see if we can get in the very, very conical roof of the lighthouse like this. So we're not using a very large canvas, so I can actually rest my hand on the outside of the border of my painting and I can get that. And that's not a problem like this. And then again, I wipe off the paint, pick up some more straight paint like this. It tends to and then sometimes too you have to change your paper towels or tissues when you're taking paint off your brush. Sometimes you'll notice that your paper towel might have paint in it. So then all of a sudden you're going to clean off your brush and there's paint left in your paper towel from the last time you cleaned off your brush, and all of a sudden you're picking up more paint, and that's what happened here. I picked up some white paint there. I didn't mean to do that, but that's what happens sometimes. So always remember, try to keep reusing, using more paper towels than less, so that you don't wind up picking up more different colors of paint onto your paintbrush where you don't want it. And then I'll just carefully we're gonna do the bottom of the lighthouse here, or the very light of the lighthouse up here, like that. It's basically like a rectangle. And then there's some other, again, I'll pick up a little bit of the black, almost black. It's French ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And we'll just put some of the panes of glass in the lighthouse up top. And then you can even put a little bit of the details to the top of the lighthouse. And I will make it a little bit wider on both sides like this. I'll make this over here a little bit more to the right, like that. And you can also, we'll show you how you can touch up the lighthouse at the top. If you find something looks a little awkward or not 100% perfect, not a problem. We will show you how to kind of adjust that. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to my large number 10 bright brush with the white, a little bit of yellow ochre. Now this is a little bit too wet. This paint has to be really, really thick. So what I'll do is I'll just go in, use the paper towel, and I'll just clean off this section with a paper towel of my palette paper. And then I'll also go in and get another bit of paper towel like this and make sure what I did is I actually rinsed off my brush when I was done using it for the painting, and I never dried it out with my paper towel like I always do as I'm painting. So that's why I added a little bit too much water to that paint. So now I just make sure I dry out the brush really well and then pick up the white again. And now you have nice thick white paint. You always remember we're painting, I know you probably already know this, but I mention it again anyway, especially if you're new here. Welcome if you're new here, if it's your first time watching our oil painting here. So, we always just say when we're doing a painting like this or any oil painting, we start out with really, really thin glazings of paint on top of the canvas. Thin. We're going really thin when we start. And then as you're building up layers on top and putting in the trees and the grasses, then that paint is getting a little thicker because it needs to be a little thicker as you're building up layers on top of each other with your oil paints. That's just kind of a principle of painting in oils. So we just want to mention that again. And then again, I'll just come over here and do a quick little bit of extra white on this left side, like that. And like this. Okay. And then you can always do a little cross hatching. If you ever want to, you can add some. We'll add a little window here. There's a window over here. Just a tiny bit of a shadow of a window. Like that. And then we have some of that blue and white of the sky showing through up here. So that's when we do that little bit of touches of light in there, and that looks really good. I think that's pretty good there. And then maybe we will do a little more, some darker color again. And we'll just try to make a little bit of a roundness to the top of the lighthouse there. Like that. And maybe a little touch of some shadowing under the top of that window by maybe just putting in a small bit of dark shadow there. Like that. Maybe over here we'll put a couple windows. Like that. And we have a completed painting. Look how good that looks. And again, we're not going for, making the most realistic painting in the world, we're kind of leaving it a little abstract. I think abstract looks good. I like abstract kind of feel to things. We might be able to put a little shadow, some blue under here, underneath the eave of the roof here. There's a little bit of a shadow here. That. We'll put a little coolness to it, some bluish green to this shadow over here, like that. And there's even some more shadow on this side of the lighthouse here. And I'm hoping you had a fun time painting. I'm adding just a couple of really light touches of yellow ochre with some white mixed in there. Just a few little dabs of light on the roof. And a couple more dabs of white over here on the ocean. All right, thanks again for painting with me. We had a great time. Another fun lighthouse. Again, I'm going to put a link or two in the description down below in this painting, in the description box below, of a couple more lighthouse paintings we did in the recent past. If you just had some more extra time and you wanted to do a few more paintings of some lighthouses to practice up on, some small compositions, feel free. There's lots of other paintings too on my archives on my channel here. We've been painting here about a little bit over a half a year, I think, creating oil paintings, maybe 3/4 of a year now. So we're really starting to pick up some steam. And again, we're always trying new things. So always remember, when you're an artist, as the artist, you're going to you'll always be experimenting, trying new things, trying sometimes the best things you're ever going to find in your art career and painting and having fun, even if you're just doing it for a hobby, or if eventually you want to do it more professionally and get into shows or whatever else you want to do. Just a good kind of thing to keep in mind is, don't worry about venturing out and doing some different things, because sometimes when you find some things on your own that you're doing that work really well for you and look pretty good, you're going to be really happy about that, because you're going to kind of feel like you've found that on your own, and it's something that it's easy to always just look to other people to find things and learn from, and that's great too. Please do as much research as you can with great other artists that are great on YouTube, and if you have local area people you can study with and everything. But also too, always remember, you can do things on your own, venture out, be creative, have fun. We're just kind of really scratching the surface of what can be done with oil paints. There's so much you can do. So I hope you had a lot of fun, and we're going to be back in a few weeks. We're usually getting together about every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, I guess, is pretty much our pace right now. And we'll see you then. Okay, bye-bye. Happy painting, everybody.